Chapter 6. The Love That Was Never Equal. The restaurant, when opened by Jacob, as he stepped in, brought this rush of noise, like an orchestra. He had just left Ethan and was still marinating and chewing over what they had discussed, in his mind circling the fragments of advice he had given, the weight of yet another person, a life pressed against his own. Well, what offered in the restaurant were smells of harmony. He was hungry. His belly could hear it. And what he was about to dine on, he didn't have to wish anymore. He didn't have to feed anyone else's soul. He could feed his body. See, Jacob wasn't looking for a conversation. As the hostess asked, table 4, he murmured, "For one." So, he was there. He just wanted a place to breathe, to eat, to fill himself with nourishment. And as they escorted him, he sat down in the booth at the far end, tucked away from all the late-night diners, stragglers, scattered among themselves. What played in the background was a song, a melody, one over heartache, one about silence. It was at that moment that he noticed her. Her name was Taylor. She sat a little bit of ways, her hands wrapped tight around, he couldn't tell, somewhat of a drink. I don't know if it had been cold, but at this point, it was definitely getting cold because she wasn't drinking it. Her hair fell across her face, but the way her shoulders shook gave her away. She wasn't tired. She wasn't eating. She was there kind of get away. Get away because she was unraveling. Probably unraveling in her space, in her apartment or house. She wanted to be in a crowd. But even in a crowd, she was all alone. Jacob noticed her, but he hesitated. See, he could leave her alone because he literally just helped Ethan. It was not his plan. The pain is this raw thing that you spend in private. But something in the curve of her position and the glazy stare into the untouched drink kind of drew him like a magnet to her. So he walked on over and he said, "Mind if I sit?" Taylor blinked, startled, looking up, and exhaled as though she had recognized him in some unspoken way. Maybe not his face, but his presence. Kind of welcoming the fact that someone had noticed her. Someone safe enough that she could collapse in front of. Yeah, most definitely. You sure? Jacob asked. "You're not waiting for a date?" No, she said. No. Taylor was like, "Definitely, no." Jacob sat across from her for a moment. Neither of them spoke. The song in the background, first piano notes, and now you can kind of hear it. "I Can't Make You Love Me" trickled out, almost on the nose, as though the night itself were scripting their conversation. Taylor let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. Go figures. Jacob tilted his head. What does? Unannounced. He was paying attention to the song, but wanted to know how it was adjacent to her life. "This song," she said, as she lifted her eyes, red-brimmed but piercing. "That's my life right now, like loving someone who just doesn't love me back, How do you know that?" Jacob asked. "Well, I don't know. Just kind of know. They don't really love you. They're just there for you, but not the way you need them to be." Jacob leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. "If you want, you can tell me about it." Taylor smiled with a grin that warmed her face, and so she did. Words poured out of her like a rush, one of those rivers where you go whitewater rafting. There was nothing holding her back from all the years of pain. She spoke about the long nights waiting for him to come home, the half-hearted excuses that he gave her, the way she bent herself into shapes just to be noticed by him. She described birthdays forgotten, promises made and broken, a slow erosion of her self-worth each time she convinced herself it would get better. I keep thinking I've just love him harder, she whispered. What is this thing about women and fixing these guys? Her voice cracked. If I gave him everything, I have just nothing else to give him. I don't know. Does he not realize that this is it? But he doesn't. He never does. Jacob said he wanted to be equal, huh? You feel like you're carrying too much of the load, and he's just there for the ride. The song swelled in the background. Bonnie Raitt's voice, fragile and unflinching. You can't make your heart feel something it won't, said the lyrics. Jacob let out a silent stretch. Sometimes silence is the only way to honor truth when it finally comes out. Then he said, you know, love isn't measured by how much you can carry for someone else. It's measured by whether you both carry each other. Sometimes you're going to be able to lift more of the load. Sometimes your partner is. And it sounds like you've been doing all the heavy lifting for quite some time. Taylor's eyes brimmed again. But Jacob could see the frustration, the recognition of grief. So what do I do, she asked. Just walk away? You know, maybe he is going to change. Maybe he's changing. Jacob looked at her. Well, I'd suggest you walk towards yourself. Sometimes leaving it isn't running away. It's finally choosing you. Do you feel like you're acknowledging yourself in this entire time that you've been giving him everything? She looked at Jacob, really looked at him as though weighing the depth of his words. For the first time all night, her shoulders eased just a little bit. But then came the turn. Vulnerability has a way of reaching for anything that feels safe. Tailing forward, trembling but clear. Okay, let's say I leave him. And let me leave with you right now. I don't care where we go. I'm just not going back there. I'll do anything drastic. Maybe that's the change I need. Jacob froze. He had seen this before. Heck, he had been there before. What she wanted was a desperate grasp for escaping and disguised as a transformation. As a younger version of himself, he had gone into this inkling, convincing himself it was fate or chemistry that he was rescuing her. But he knew better this time. She was vulnerable, and he didn't want to prey on her vulnerability. Taylor, he said softly, choosing each word with care. If I say yes to that, I wouldn't be helping you. I'd be taking advantage of you while you're vulnerable. And you deserve so much better than that. Better than the man you've been with. And rather than me making you think this pain can be solved with a one-night stand that makes you feel good at the moment. But probably tomorrow morning, you won't call me, which I won't mind. I'll have got what I want because I'm human. And when he calls, you'll fall back because you'll regret everything that you did. Even though it might be tucked away into an amazing night. But here I am, kind of, talking myself up. Her face kind of grinning, but a bit flushed. Half embarrassment, but also half kind of taken aback by the words of Jacob. She leaned back, wiping quickly her eyes. You're right. God, you're right. I just don't know what else to do. Jacob reached across the table, not to hold her hand, but to place his palm flat on her hand. What you need is rest. Go home. Not to him, but go home to yourself. Get some sleep. When you wake up, don't rush. Maybe you need to fall back asleep. Tomorrow's the weekend anyway, and hopefully you don't work. Taylor looked at him and said, no, I don't. And sit with your feelings then. Marinate on it. Ask yourself if this is really what you want for the long term. If the answer is still yes, and you can see him as your partner in life, when you're old and gray and he's there with you and your grandkids are running around. If you still know deep down that you deserve more, though, well, you know what to do. She said it. Walk away. And Jacob said, Then make your terms. Not because tonight you're heartbroken or tomorrow you wake up with a broken heart, but because you know exactly what you want out of your future and who you want to be with. That person. And then go become that person. That list you have, Taylor, how'd you know, said, Jacob said, only smart people have a list. And so do I. Taylor let out a laugh, staring at him. This time, piercing lips together. The music went silent in the restaurant, only leaving it with faint rattle of dishes in the kitchen and the whisper of cars sliding past on the street outside. For a moment, she looked younger, like a childlike being told she doesn't have to carry the weight of the world like a Herculean effort anymore. She looked at Jacob and asked, "You really think I deserve better?" Jacob gave out a smile. "Look, I know you do, but it doesn't matter what I say or what I do, because at the end of the day, I want to leave, and you'll be by yourself. So, do you think you deserve better?" Something loosened in the posture right at that moment. It wasn't relief exactly, but like a first breath of air after being underwater for too long, realizing she could float, she could swim. Heck, she could do free stroke, butterflies, breaststroke. She could do it all, even backstroke. And all the way away from her problems and into the person who she wanted to be. She nodded, staring down at her drink, taking it to her lips, drinking it for a second before she spoke. Then, as if suddenly aware of herself, she pushed her drink away and got up, sliding out of her chair. Standing there, she said, "Thank you," her voice steadier than ever before. "I came in here tonight thinking I lost everything. Maybe just making myself resolve to the conclusion that I'd have to be his wife and live this life of silence and talk to other desperate housewives and drive a car or truck or minivan or, anyway, do these drop-offs that I don't want, friends I don't want to be around with, hanging around his guy friends who married these girls who obviously don't want to be married to them. Maybe that doesn't have to be, because I just found myself." Jacob looked at her and didn't say a word as she turned around and exited the restaurant, letting her go. Go with that. No dramatic promises, no exchange numbers, no grand gestures, and no spoken word after her diatribe. Just a quiet release into the night. She paused at the door, looking back once, as though to test, as if this moment had been real, as if Jacob had been sitting there, as if she had just got up and she wasn't watching herself in a simulation. And then she disappeared. The last thing he saw were her shoulders, back and held higher. Jacob stayed behind, and he ate. He did exactly what he said he was coming to do. The waitress dropping off the plates that he had ordered and then taking them away. He finished his drink, and as he sat there, it startled him. The refrain came back to his mind. "I can't make you love me if you don't." He thought in that moment about Taylor, about Ethan, about all the people who had sat across from him, asking for a way out, a way forward, a way to stop hurting. And he thought about himself. And in that moment, when he had been just so raw with all the pain and anger, sorrow, grief, tragedy, fear, just as ready to trade clarity for comfort, he realized he had become a mirror. His pain had been lost for nothing. Maybe he went through it so he could help others go through it too. Tonight, he had done what he had wished someone had done for him. Reminded him that real love doesn't come from running, Doesn't come from forcing it. It comes when it's equal, when it's ready, when it's mutual. Anything less is just less. Sugar finally rose, tossing the check now with bills, cash, and a tip added. Exiting the restaurant, the night air met him with a cool honesty. He walked past the neon sign still buzzing like a stubborn heart, hands in his pockets, the echo of the tailor's thanks lingering in the ears as he saw couples walk by. A smile on his face, not sinister. He knew. He hoped that everyone was with the person that they should be, that they ought to be. And if not, he could be a mirror to them, for himself, because there's no point wasting anyone's time. Another chapter closed, another life nudged back toward that they should be, on the journey that they ought to be, that they want to be. And Jacob, still anonymous, still searching, he kept walking. He walked home.